Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 13th of September of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. We have already discussed in the previous video the meeting between Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin that took place in the airspace station by the name of Vostochny, probably the President of Russian Federation and Kim Jong-un had some agreements regarding the supply of 152mm shells, of rocket technologies and so on, and I believe that they found a solution. They had some agreement, but this is not the most important. Meanwhile, the Russian and Korean leader took some agreements and meeting in the eastern part of Russian Federation. The Ukrainians made a very powerful missile strike against the Russian positions and against the Russian fleet, the Russian infrastructure in Sevastopol. As we discussed in the previous video, as a result of that attack, two ships or two navy units were damaged. First of all, the Ukrainians damaged the infantry ship, one landing infantry ship, Minsk by the name of Minsk, and also the Ukrainians destroyed the Russian submarine Rostov-on-Don. Of course, this is a very powerful damage, very powerful losses, and as we know, Rostov-on-Don is the type of submarine that can carry caliber missiles. So basically, the Ukrainians haven't managed to destroy, but at least for some period of time, the Ukrainians managed to reduce the number of missile carriers of Russian Federation in this direction. But also, these are not the most important updates. Very interesting situation, very interesting piece of news came to us from the United Kingdom. Today, the Sky News reported that that significant attack on Russia's submarine was made with the usage of British cruise missile Storm Shadow. So, official organization published a very interesting piece of news regarding the involvement of United Kingdom into the conflict between Ukraine and Russian Federation. We understand that United Kingdom are not afraid of anything in this world, and this is their policy. We need to respect their decision. But this is a very important update because the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation, Shoigu, reported that if any day the Ukrainians use the Western weapon, the Russians would make immediately strike against the decision centers. But these updates also is not the most important. The most important update about the situation, about the strikes against the Russian fleet, came today from the United States of America, and to be more precise, from the Elon Musk, the founder, chairman, the CEO, and many other positions of the company by the name of SpaceX. I took a decision to add Elon Musk to the map because this is a very important person who currently don't have any connections probably to the war between Ukraine and Russia, but everything depends, a lot of things depends on him, and today he reported and published his own tweet in Twitter that there was an emergency request from government authorities to activate Starlink all the way to Sevastopol, the obvious intent being to sink most of the Russian fleet at Encha. Of course, Elon Musk reported that he refused to do this because he understood correctly that this action may force the SpaceX to become a part of this war. He doesn't want this. He doesn't want to lose his satellites. He doesn't want to have problems with the Russians, and he refused. But anyway, the United States of America found a solution how to attack. Maybe if the Western countries had access to Starlink internet, maybe they would achieve a better result. But Elon Musk in this situation played in Russian favor, and no matter how this war is going to be finished, anyway, people will remember Elon Musk not just because of this case, but because of his influence on the entire situation in Ukraine. Now let's move to the ground. We had also a lot of updates, and that was not the day of ground actions, of ground activity. That was the 13th of September, was a day of missile strikes. This morning we have already discussed few Ukrainian missile strikes against the Russian positions, against the Russian artillery system Sta-S. During the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians published a lot of geolocated videos how they destroyed Russian artillery systems using the HIMARS missiles, and they were trying to show complete Ukrainian superiority in the long-range missiles, and probably they had this superiority. When talking about some new videos, we got the video from Kremenная Rubezhnoye. The Ukrainians managed to discover another Russian artillery squad, 2 artillery systems, Gets and S, and as a result of another HIMARS missiles, the Russians lost another artillery squad on the Liman direction. So, and we could say that that's it. It's like very important things. The Ukrainians establish full control, full superiority on the long range distance and so on, but the Russians publish probably the most, we can say, beautiful and the most interesting videos that I have ever seen since the beginning of the special military operation. The first video is coming from in the vicinity of Mariivka. The Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian raider R-18, and as a result of strike, that raider was destroyed. And this very interesting and important video, because according to the sign of the strike, I can't say that this strike was made by the Iskander missile. Something tells me that the Russians were using Tornado S systems to do that, and this is very important, and there's a very big difference between these two types of artillery systems. A little bit later, the Russians published another video how they discovered another Ukrainian raider ST-68UM, and as a result of another strike, again using the Tornado S missiles, the Ukrainians lost another raider in this direction. So the most important part of these two videos is the distance. Of course, the distance. I believe and I assume that the Russians were attacking those two raiders from Donetsk direction, and for example, if we calculate the distance in the first case, the distance was 71 kilometers. So it's almost like HIMARS strike. At least it's cheapest or the most easiest like configurations. And when talking about another direction, another explosion, another raider that took place that had in the vicinity of Krivorozhe and Novomarivka, the distance is around 86 kilometers. And the distance is very important, but probably another important thing, another important detail about those two strikes is that the Russians were making recording all this video from drone using probably Arlan or something like this. So the Russians managed not just penetrate the Ukrainians' defense, air defense, managed to destroy the Ukrainian raiders, and also the Russians were able to record the situation and to show a very nice picture of the entire like explosions, entire attack in first and the second case. And this is also very important. We see that Ukrainians do have some problems with air defense, at least in this direction. Now we are moving to Bradley Square, to Zaporozhye area. Today we got a lot of very interesting details and very interesting update. And first, and probably the most important, is that Ukrainians are no longer control the entire Robotyne. As a result of fierce clashes, probably counter-offensives that the Russians made during the previous days, the Russians managed to return control over a few streets in the southern part of the settlement. The Ukrainian 47th Mechanized Brigade published the video of FPV drone against the Russian armored vehicle, which confirms that the Ukrainians don't have 100% control over the settlement. If we receive another confirmation like this, I will change the color of this area. At least I will remove any color, and I will mark this territory as a gray zone. The Ukrainians from their side continue bombing and attacking the Russian positions, to be more precise the 46th Air Mobile Brigade, which have been concentrated in this area recently. I'll remind you that the main concentration of 46th Air Mobile Brigade is located in the fields between Verbovo and Robotyne, and as I understand, the Ukrainians are ready, at least the 46th Brigade is ready to start offensive operation in direction of Novoprokopovka, but for some reason they still haven't received a real order to begin this offensive operation. Maybe because of the fact that they have concentrated the forces, but they yet haven't reduced to ruins every single fortification in the settlement, and currently it's a suicide operation to continue attacks. So now they need some time. But from other side, we understand that Ukrainians don't have time, because every single second the Ukrainians located in this area, they're being attacked by the Russians' artillery systems. When talking about Verbovo, the Ukrainians also have accumulated the forces of 82nd Brigade, and also they have concentrated some fist, and they're also are ready to continue offensive operation, but for some reason the Ukrainians is not attacking this direction as well, are not attacking in this direction as well. And probably the same reason. They managed to concentrate forces, but they yet haven't managed to reduce the fortifications and the settlement till ruins, and they need some time. And of course the Ukrainians don't have time, because every single day in the fields mean significant losses among infantry and armored vehicles that arrives in this sector every single hour or probably day. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes in this direction in the Zaporozhye area, the Ukrainians lost 205 soldiers, 6 armored vehicles and 8 artillery systems. Another day of significant losses among artillery systems of Ukrainian forces. And the level of losses is very heavy. For example, yesterday the Ukrainians lost 35 soldiers in this direction, and today 205. So we see the difference, like 7 times more, 6 times more. Now we are moving to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. We haven't received nothing from the battle of Novomayorsk and Novodonetsk. The only video that we have already discussed is the usage of HIMARS missiles against the Russian artillery systems that we have already discussed. When talking about Donetsk direction, we also haven't received nothing, just again rumors, talks about the northeastern part of Oputnaya. That means that we will continue using and keeping Ukrainian soldiers in this direction until we get a more reliable and understandable situation about the settlement. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes on Donetsk direction, the Ukrainians lost 140 soldiers and 6 armored vehicles. And also the Ukrainians managed to destroy the Russian Msta-S system that located in the vicinity of Marinka, the system that the Russians were using to supply and support the the troopers of Russia in Marinka and Staromlynovka, Staromikhailivka, Krasnogorovka. Now we are moving probably to the most important area and the most interesting area, the area that is completely covered with the fog of war, to Bakhmut direction. We're going to talk about Klishchiivka, mainly about Klishchiivka and Andreevka. For example, the Ukrainian segment of Twitter have already captured Andreevka a week ago. We have already discussed this. Also, the Ukrainians have already captured Klishchiivka probably 2 or 3 or 5 days ago, and most of the mappers colored either Klishchiivka and Andreevka into yellow color, which means into Ukrainian color, let's call it like this. That means that both these two settlements were under Ukrainian control. But probably I also follow different mappers, and to tell the truth, as I understand, I was the only mapper, and I am the only mapper who shown and who continues showing these small streets in Klishchiivka as an area under Russian control. And I explained you in the previous video my logic, and the logic was very simple and still simple, that the Russians were bombing this settlement heavily. But if we take a look at the geolocations and bombings, and this is the icons with the bomb, we see that the Russians try not to bomb exactly these streets. The Russians were bombing the southern part, the western part of Klishchiivka, the central part, the hill of 05.7 hill, but we haven't seen even a single geolocated confirmation that the Russians were bombing exactly this street. And based on that, I made the conclusion that there are Russian forces, that few buildings in this area is under Russian control. And we had the video of Russian sniper who was working from the window of some almost destroyed, reduced to a ruined building. And today we got a final confirmation that this area is under Russian control. Today the Ukrainian forces published an episode of attempt to storm the settlement or to clear this area. The Ukrainian grenade launcher was moving along the ruins, and at some point he started attacking the Russian positions. So on this video, the Ukrainian was attacking the Russians. Now we're gonna see the attack and then explosion. Just a second, and here we go. An explosion. So that grenade launcher was attacked from this area, from this street, and he was attacking in this direction, which basically confirms that the Russians control at least this part of Klishchiivka. The Russian mappers like Brybar and so on today started publishing different speculations, different rumors and unconfirmed updates that the Russians launched a counter-offensive operation. As a result of counter-offensive operation, they managed to repel and to to force the Ukrainians to step back, there were no counteroffensive from the Russian side. The Russians controlled this part of Klishchiivka, and basically as a result of clashes they didn't leave this area, and currently they managed to save their presence there. And when everybody saw these videos, they started like creating the news that the Russians counterattacked. No, there were no counterattack from the Russian side. They just saved their control since the beginning. They were keeping this control. And when talking about Andreevka, the same situation. The Ukrainians were bombing the Russian underground facilities, underground roads that connected the settlement with the mainland. The Ukrainians were bombing the city itself, and the Ukrainians shown also a video how the grenade launchers also were attacking the settlement from the west. We have updated this map showing that this territory, this tree line is under Ukrainian control, but yet Andreevka remains under the Russians, and the Ukrainians haven't managed to enter or capture or something like this. When talking about the northern flank, there were also a lot of updates. The Russians every single day tried to bomb and attack the accumulation and concentration of Ukrainian forces in the settlements like Minkovka, Privilye, Golubovka, Devesinichev, Zaliznyanska. As a result of those attacks, the Ukrainians have losses every single day. They tried to concentrate to regroup their forces after failed attempt of 13th Mechanized Brigade to attack in the direction of Zaliznyanska. I believe that Ukrainians is about to finish this regrouping, and soon we're going to see more attempts from the Ukrainian side to attack in the Russian direction, in direction of the Russian positions. The same situation on the northern flank. The Ukrainians try to concentrate forces. Very likely they managed to do this, and soon we need to expect another attempt from the Ukrainian side to attack in direction of Krasnopolovka and Solidar itself. When talking about Kremenная forces, we discussed the Ukrainians using the HIMARS missile destroyed another Russian artillery systems. Furthermore, the Ukrainians continue counter-artillery duels. Maybe this is the only area where the Ukrainians have possibility to use their artillery effectively, and the main reason of that is that Ukrainians have possibilities to hide their artillery systems in Kremenная forest. There is a very powerful area where the Ukrainians can use low-range, middle-range artillery systems without being afraid of being discovered, by the Russian counter-artillery equipment. Just the forest, and that's it. This is the only area where the Ukrainians can use this type of artillery, and they're using it. They counter-attack, they destroy, and so on. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes on Liman direction, the Ukrainians lost 65 soldiers. When talking about Kupinsk area, we haven't received almost nothing from this direction. Just I have updated the map in the vicinity of Liman one more time. This forest is from now on is in the gray zone, because from this area we haven't received even a single geo confirmation about the Russian progress, but we got some video from the Ukrainian side how they were trying to help a Ukrainian armored vehicle who was among the forests to evacuate because he was running very close to the Russian positions. As a result of clashes on the Kupin front line, the Ukrainians lost 85 soldiers. The Russians continue bombing and destroying the Ukrainian positions, their concentrations along the border line. Today we got another video from Volchansk. As a result of artillery strike, Ukrainians lost another position. And if we increase the number of updates, at least from this direction, we see how the Russians are focused in this direction, and we understand that this is a primary target for the Russians to attack the Ukrainian concentration in the settlement by the name of Volchansk, that located on the border between Kharkiv and Belgorod. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.